Hey YouTube, it's Point Shooter here. Today I'm doing an interesting video that I think you guys will find unusual, but something that may interest you. I have been interested in volunteering with a local Asperger Syndrome support group, which comes under the broad spectrum of the Autism Society. I was interested in volunteering for a couple reasons. One, I think it's a worthy cause, and two, Asperger's is something that I've struggled with for most of my adult life. I was diagnosed about 13 years ago, and it's something that has been a challenge all of my life. But I've learned to live with it, and I think I've come a long way. And one of my tunnel vision interests, as most of you guys know, people with Asperger's usually have one area of focus. Mine has always been survival since I was a kid. And this presentation is sort of the culmination of a life spent researching, practicing survival, and especially my experience here on YouTube. And I wanted to create, or I guess was asked to create, a one-day course that could be taught to students with Asperger's about survival in the wild. Now, I'm no survival expert. As you guys know, I'm a college student, I'm a wilderness enthusiast, but I call upon the experts' advice and draw upon personal experience in the presentation. I don't think I'm going to actually show this PowerPoint. This is more so you guys on YouTube could actually see what I was planning. But if I did have the classroom scenario, if they wanted me to just come to their meet and greet night, for example, I could show the PowerPoint. But this gives an overview of what I hope to accomplish in the course. So stay with me and here we go. The best survival skills are the ones you never have to use. That's a no-brainer. The idea that I'm going to try to teach them is to stay safe and not get into a dangerous situation. One of the ways to do that is leave a game plan with two people who will alert authorities if you're not back in time. There's a ton of things we can talk about with this when we start the hike. Leaving your footprints on a piece of tin foil. You could take any kind of shoe impression. The tinfoil is always popular. You want to let people know where you're going. Have somebody with a map that shows your beginning and your end destination, different things like that. One of the big things is be familiar with the area where you're hiking. Most of the people that I'm going to be dealing with are hopefully relatively familiar with the park where we're going to be going. But we're going to treat it as a survival situation in that we're not using navigation aids like GPS or anything, whereas we're looking for regular shelter sites, but we'll get on to that. Next, survival priorities. These are in my order. Everybody always says shelter, fire, water, food, but I say the first one is stay put and try to signal for help. See if you can get out that first night. Maybe you can flag down a car that's going by, you find a road, or you find other hikers on the trail and they could call for help. But the first thing you need to do, and the thing that always gets overlooked in the priorities, is you need to just sit down, drink some water, calm down, and find out where you're going. One of the personal experiences I'm going to share, it happened to me about 2 years ago. I was out hiking, day hiking. It was just miserably hot. Must have been 95, at least 80% humidity. And I had forgotten to fill my Camelback all the way up, and I was drinking, and then I just felt that as it got to the end, and I was thinking, oh man, it was getting dark. I didn't have my compass. I forgot which direction I was going. I got lost on this trail. I was running out of water, and I said, man, I need to sit down and figure this out. And this is something I'm going to describe to the kids and say that by calming down and retracing my steps, I was able to get back, find the trail before dark, got out of there, didn't have to spend the night in the woods. But with the skills that I'm going to teach them, they're going to know how to be prepared to spend that night if they have to. So, stay put, figure it out, signal for help, see if you can get out. Next would be shelter. If it starts raining, you need to get out of the elements. If it's cold out, you need to maintain that core body temperature. All things we're going to talk about. Discuss basic fire making. One thing that when I discussed the idea, they said, oh yeah, you show them how to make fire with sticks. And I said, I've tried it many times, I guess a couple times, and I've never had any success with it. I've always had smoke but no ember. and I'm sure it's a lack of technique, or and that I'm using the wrong wood, but I said it's not something that I would try to teach somebody because it's not something that even I'm comfortable with. But we'll talk about carrying 3 different ways to make a fire. You know, fire is one of the top priorities. The next would be water, and I guess depending on climate, I might reverse those. If it was extremely hot in the summertime, you know, water might be more of a priority because you need to thermoregulate your body. But fire, then water, and then food. And as everybody knows, food is one of the least priorities because you can live weeks without food if you have to. So this is just a general overview of what we're going to cover. So priority 1, staying put and signaling for help. I'm going to tell them don't get off the trail, or don't get from where your last known position was. Stay in one place because you're easier to find. A lot of people have probably read that book Hatchet by Gary Paulsen about the boy in the plane crash, and one of the first mistakes was that the plane suddenly leered off course and they were, you know, way into the Canadian backwoods, way off the flight plan, and that's why search and rescue, part of why search and rescue didn't find him, was because they were so far off course. If you just keep wandering around in a panic situation, you're going to get further and further away, deeper and deeper into the trouble. So stay put, figure it out. As I said, call for help if you can, use a phone, maybe flag somebody down, and be patient, because chances are in this first couple hours people aren't looking for you. Unless you've got people who, you know, parents who are going to call if you weren't back by, you know, the afternoon. It takes a while for search and rescue to get going. So you might have to spend a day or 2 out there, and that's something that I want them to be prepared for. So the second priority is shelter, as we mentioned. Stay out of the elements, and this is where the space blanket, trash bags, extra clothing, and natural shelter come into place. And as you can see right here, Cody Lundeen has his shelter going. You know, people are going to say, "Oh, that looks cool." You're not going to be able to build something like that out in the state park. You know, we can't do that, a wikia. But you could build a lean-to with a poncho and a piece of paracord. You know, simple things like that. I've spent the night under ponchos. You know, it's simple things like that that you can use. And then we're going to talk about natural hazards, flooding, lightning, deadfall trees that can fall on you, different things like that to avoid. Fire is going to be one of your main ways to thermoregulate. We're going to talk about 3 ways to make fire. Well, we're going to talk about more than 3, but there's going to be 3 main ones: matches, magnesium block, and a lighter. We will talk about other different ways. Flint and steel, just mentioned that if they had, people who read the book Hatchet will remember Brian uses the hatchet and a flint stone. It's a carbon steel hatchet to make sparks. Just mentioned that there's a number of ways to do it. Basically, I don't want to give them any crazy ideas that they're going to say, oh, you know, I've got my Swiss Army knife, so I don't have to carry a lighter. You want them to have redundancy, and that's what I'm going to try to mention. Because A, the Swiss Army knife is stainless, so it's not going to work, and B, you know, the chances of them finding just the right stone, just the right moment, and having everything, it's better to be prepared ahead of time. That's what we're going to stress in this course. Then we're going to talk about fire safety, of course. So then water. You know, you can sweat a quart per hour, and I'll tell them that's a quarter of a gallon, so in 4 hours of hiking you could burn through a gallon of water. So we're going to talk about at maximum hydration, the proper ways to hydrate your body. Cody Lundeen has a great school of thought on that. We're going to discuss that. Obviously, don't drink natural water unless you can disinfect it. Talk about boiling, UV radiation, and chemical treatment to filter water. I'm not going to really talk about water filters. I'll mention them, but for the course of this training, it's going to mostly be about chemical or boiling. So, of course, even if the water looks clear, it's not going to be safe to drink. And then, never ever drink urine or seawater. It can kill you. I was thinking back when I was in high school. We had a Facebook group about outdoor survival, and somebody said, well, Bear Grylls says you can drink your urine. You know, one of the best ways to dehydrate yourself is to drink those toxins and the urea that's in the urine. So I'm going to tell them right off the bat, do not do it. 5th priority, the least priority, is food. You can survive a long time without food, but having some snacks can help boost morale, keep your energy up, different things like that. We're going to tell them, don't be going around thinking you're going to be Rambo, hunting and trapping and fishing. It all takes patience and a lot of skill. You know, I've built traps, I've fished before. You can't just think that you're going to go out with your shoelace and make a snare and, you know, come home with a rabbit. And I think there's a big misconception with people. I was reading over some of the things that we wrote back when I was in 6th grade and read that book Hatchet, and everybody said, oh, well, I would take a pocket knife because then I could hunt with it. You're not going to go hunting with your pocket knife. You could make a spear and go hunting with it, but in a typical 2 to 3 day search and rescue scenario, your best bet is conserving calories, and that's what I'm going to talk to them about. We're going to also talk about foods that take less water to digest. So the bottom line, thermoregulation is the key. That is the main bullet point. If they take nothing else from it, I want them to understand the ways that their body thermoregulates and the ways to prevent heat loss or excessive heat gain. So hypothermia or hyperthermia. Anything above or below 98.6 can be fatal. So water, shelter, clothing, fire, and food are the ways to regulate your body temperature. So that's part 1. So part 2, we're going to talk about building a kit. Once we've talked about all the basics and what the priorities are. You can see here we've got one of my favorite Mountain Smith packs, just an Altoids tin, or one of the commercial survival kits. I'm going to tell them a bit about my survival philosophy, as you'll see here in a minute. So consider your environment. If it's hot and humid out, you should be carrying a lot of water and ways to procure water. You know, you don't need to take extra layers if you're worried about heat stroke. One of the things that you would want to think about is, you know, keeping the sun off you. Have clothing and shelter to suit the environment. If, as I said in another slide, if it's going to be wet, bring a poncho, because you can use it as a poncho, you can use it as a lean-to, you can use it as a tarp, a ground sheet. Fire making is real difficult in the wet climate, so you need to be adequately prepared. I just saw that Walmart is carrying Orion 5-minute pocket flares that are about 6 inches long, about the size, I guess, of a lifesavers tube, and they'll burn for about 3 to 5 minutes, and that would help you get a campfire going. You can get 2 of those for $5. That would be a great addition if you were going to the jungle or somewhere. You know, you don't have to carry a 20-minute road flare, but just a couple matches and some dryer lint might not get the job done if everything is so wet. So these are things you need to think about. I don't like the ready-made kits, and I'm going to tell them to stay away from them. I was looking at the ones by Bear Grylls today, and I'm going to describe some of them to the people. You know, even the SAS survival tin, a lot of the stuff in there, you know, the knife is a tiny little, you know, 1-inch blade, razor blade, or little pocket knife. You know, there's a wire saw, a couple matches, a couple safety pins. The idea being you can cook in the tin that the container came in. You know, different things like that. It's better than nothing, but if you have a real good survival kit, it's going to make your life a lot easier. So stay away from the ready-made stuff in most cases. Portability. As Cody Lundin says, the more you know, the less you need. One of my favorite quotes. Good kit doesn't have to weigh a ton or take up an entire pack. It could fit in a waist pack or a small backpack, and then most things we talk about are lightweight and compact and common items. These aren't a lot of things that you're going to have to go out and buy. Hopefully you have some of them around your house. So the common household items, we've got garbage bags, cotton balls, matches, duct tape, tin cans, water bottles, first aid supplies, and a flashlight. You could also say, you know, extra clothing, a hat, different things like that, cotton bandana. But these are some of the basics that are going to make your life a lot easier. The dollar store has 9x6, what do you call it, drop cloths for $1. That would make a great lean-to. You know, it's not going to be as durable as a poncho or a outdoor tarp, but it's very small, it's very cheap, and it's lightweight. Put some duct tape at the corners, reinforce them. You've got yourself a great piece of shelter material. Garbage bags. Someone recently commented, I can't remember the name, on my Cody Lundin survival kit video, and all of us survival guys had been going back and forth saying, yeah, you know, as long as you've got fire, your container, and your knife, you're pretty much good to go. And this guy said, he said, hey, wait a minute. He said, imagine you're crippled. Imagine you're in a situation where you've lost your dexterity. That space blanket and that garbage bag are probably going to rate higher than your cup or your knife, because you're going to need shelter immediately to get out of the elements. And I thought about it, and I said, you know, that's a really good point. I always include those as shelter-making materials, like a space blanket or a casualty blanket, up at the top with the top 5 items. But, you know, people always think as long as you have the top 3, it's enough. If these guys go out with a can of pop, a Swiss Army knife, and a box of matches, it's not going to do them any good if it starts raining. So these are why all the items are important. So specialty items, a magnesium block, signal mirror, a whistle. They may or may not have a whistle, parachute cord. I'm going to tell them they could use other types of rope if they wanted to, but that they need something that is sturdy. They can take strain. Obviously, they're not going to be climbing with it, but something that's nice that you can take apart, like paracord. Knife is going to be a controversial issue. These guys are mostly high school to early adult age. A lot of them, I guess, do live with their parents. I'm not going to lie, so do I. But they might have different rules for what kind of knife they could have. So we're going to talk about what you can do with a folding pocket knife versus a fixed blade knife. And then also talk about saws, wire saws, different things like that. Space blankets they may or may not have, and then water purification tablets. I know Cody has always said bleach and iodine are the ways to do it, but the more I've been reading from the CDC about iodine, it's not going to be 100% effective against crypto. So I'm going to say just get the micropure tablets. It'll nuke anything that's in the water, especially if the water is really funky, you know, Hurricane Katrina style. And if all else fails, boil it. But the water purification tablets, yeah, you have to buy them. Yeah, they only have a limited shelf life, but it's better to be safe than sorry. So I'm going to recommend they go with those. So putting it all together, no kit can prepare you for everything, but these items could save your life. And as we said, some of these items are expensive. You know, a good survival knife, $20 to $50. That's an estimate. I think the M-Tech 6-inch K-Bar knockoff is a great survival knife. It's stainless steel, only cost me $12 delivered to my door from eBay. I think it would make a great survival knife. But maybe they don't want a big folding knife. Maybe a Wahoo Killer fits their fancy. Or maybe they really want something nice. They go for a K-Bar or an Essie or a rat knife. Something really nice. But what they've got to remember is even though they have all the gear, if they don't know how to use it, it won't help them. Right here we got Les Stroud blowing a tinder bundle. One of the things that they show in a lot of the survival manuals is the bow drill method, or the fire by friction. That's great if you just have days to fritter away and you can identify hardwood trees at a glance. But making a natural tinder bundle using with your ferro rod or your magnesium block is something important to know. So just the magnesium block on its own isn't enough. People think, oh, well, I have a lighter. That means I have an instant campfire. No, you have to have the right tinder, kindling, and then fuel. You need to know how to build your fire, so it requires other knowledge. So misinformation, outright lies. Again, I come back to this. Don't ever drink urine. Don't do it. Just don't do it. There's no benefit. Yeah, some people overseas, there's that urine therapy and different things like that. It's just gross. You need to hydrate with clean, disinfected water. And as we said earlier, most ready-made kits are inadequate. Remember that TV shows are mostly fantasy. Now, a couple of the guys that I quote here are the stars of TV shows. But what you need to realize is that a lot of the situations that they show on these TV shows is made for drama, made for TV. Rappelling down glaciers, or what did Bear Grylls do? He took a deer's lung and rafted down a river or something like that. He used an animal lung or bladder or something I forget what the whole episode was, but he used some animal part to go rafting down a river. I mean, that's just crazy. I would never advise somebody to do something like that. It's beyond the scope of anything that I can teach, and it just goes beyond common sense in my opinion. Now, if you have a regular boat and want to go rafting down the river, you know, that's one thing. But don't do something hokey that could get you killed. And remember, this should be in bold. Not everything you read on the internet is true. You read a lot of things, you know, that there's you can silence revolvers and do all this crazy stuff. You know, people talk a lot about those things. When it comes down to it, when your bud is on the line, you need stuff that works. So I love the tribute to the Matrix there. So suggested books. 98.6 is a great book. If you're only going to read one book, that's the book. The survival kit that he describes in there really goes along with everything that I've discussed here, and that's reading 98.6 was kind of the confirmation of a life's work for me. That I finally said, finally, there's an expert that agrees with what I've got. And then there were some things like tincture of iodine that I said, oh, well, you know, I hadn't ever included that before. It looks like a good thing to have. If you want something a little more serious, When All Hell Breaks Loose is a good book about urban prepping, urban survival. It's 98.6 is about the wilderness survival. When All Hell Breaks Loose is more urban environment. And then a nice book that I really enjoy and actually prefer over most of the other military ones is the Air Force Aircrew Survival book, the one published in '96. I have an original copy of that, and I think it's great. It's not too hokey. Of course, it talks a little bit about evasion, and that's obviously not something you want to do in a survival situation. But I think it's a good manual, and I think that if you had 98.6 in the Aircrew Survival book, those would be a good two to start with. Of course, there's many others out there that would be great, but a lot of them, you know, you sort of have to wade through the stuff. You're not going to be out there trapping and snaring in a 3-day scenario, not unless you already have experience. So I like 98.6 because it just talks about the basics, maximizing what hydration and food you have, staying put, waiting for rescue. That's the basics of it, guys. And then reliable sources for further reading. We have Cody, Les, and Dave. There's some controversy over Dave. I know he got kicked off dual survival, something about misrepresenting his Army background. I've watched him for years. I'm a big Dave Canterbury fan. I believe that he puts honest and good information out there. He's someone that I trust. Les Stroud, I really enjoyed Survivor Man. It was one of the better survival shows. People say, oh, well, he's lazy. He just goes out there for 6 days and just sits around because he's not eating. Well, he's showing you how to, in my opinion, how to maximize the food that you have, how to not expend extra calories. He's not talking about doing, you know, crazy things. He shows how to set up a few traps and snares, but it's not none of this, you know, go lash your knife to a stick and go kill a boar with it. None of that nonsense. And then, of course, Cody Lundeen, my favorite. 20-plus years of experience. He's a survival instructor in Arizona, works with search and rescue. What he does is he takes students on his survival course. They pay and they go on his course, and they coordinate with the local search and rescue that on the last day of the course, they meet up with search and rescue. So it's an exercise for the students learning how to survive and get rescued, and it gives search and rescue a chance to practice their skills and actually locate somebody. I think it's a great approach. One of my favorite guys by far. So that concludes the presentation, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. I'd really love to hear some feedback. I'm trying to keep things basic with these guys. We're not telling them how to be Rambo. We're telling them how to stay alive if they get off the trail for a couple days, how to wait for that rescue helicopter to come, how to signal, how to just get by with the basics. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Take care. This is Point Shooter signing out.